Feeling all spry today. Uh, Maybe it's because I'm recording a little bit earlier in the day. So let's see how this goes. So, um, come on in. Um, and let's jump on in. In my last conversation, I talked about the tension that I feel when I hear the phrase decenter men. There's a camera critic. And that tension, as you know, I got my notes here. I don't do any editing, so just let me see if we can get through this whole thing and have a conversation about a pretty hot kind of hot topic right now. So, the last conversation, I talked about how I feel when I hear the phrase decenter men and that tension that I feel it comes from my desire for a long term connection and what decentering actually brings up inside of me. Honestly, I want to decenter the parts of me that disappear in relationships, but I don't want to decenter my desire for closeness, my desire for partnership, my desire for a shared life. Bit of tension rises up in me when I hear decenter men mantra. Not because I don't appreciate the immediate and truly life saving benefit women gain from it. I get that part, and I know it's crucial. I'm not downplaying. For many women, decentering men creates space, safety, and relief. It interrupts patterns of overgiving, or self erasure, and um, survival based attachment. And in a patriarchal context, that interruption matters. What I'm noticing is that the nuance in the conversation often gets lost in the relief that comes from the first pendulum swing, the swing of providing, of the need to provide protection. Because underneath the protection, so I get that part, underneath the protection, I hear something else. And it's almost like a loud whisper. And it says, wash away what you value, connecting with and being in relationship with me. And that's where the pause rises in me. Because what I'm realizing is that the real work here isn't about men. Hold tight, hold tight. It's about whether women believe they have to wait for the pendulum that swings to safety and protection to swing back toward the center before they're allowed to say that they desire, want, and expect more in their romantic relationships. Well, I do. I want all of that. So the tension that I feel is about whether protection becomes the end goal or whether it becomes the ground from which we ask for better. I don't want women to have to choose between safety and desire. Now we do. I don't want women to have to choose between self respect and protection. And I don't want the message to be first you protect yourself and then maybe later, and we haven't even gotten to this part of the conversation. The conversation is just about decentering men. Um, but first, those things. First, you protect yourself, and then possibly later, you get to want intimacy that feels nourishing. In a patriarchy, that could be many, many years. So when I say I want to go one layer deeper on this decentering conversation. What I mean is this: how do we honor the very real patriarchal relief that decentering men can offer without letting it erase our right to relational fulfillment? How do we move into keeping ourselves safe and building relationships that actually feel good to be? How do we do both of those? I mean, because so many of us value relationships. What I'm realizing is that the real work here includes a nuance that isn't just about men. It's about what we've all been trained in. That is, or how we've all been trained. And that is, it's good for women to give, to forego in order to stay connected, in order for relationships to thrive, basically. So when I talk about decentering men, I don't desire the rejection of them. And I'm not talking about opting out of intimacy or partnership. What I'm talking about is decentering self abandonment, decentering the quiet ways that I make myself smaller to preserve connection. As a woman, when you're in midlife, emotional safety feels loud. In midlife, I notice sooner when I'm bracing, when I'm shrinking, and even when I'm self silencing. And I've learned that paying attention to that isn't weakness. I've learned that from it's my years of experience, it's wisdom showing up. So, hi, if you're new here, I am Minty Ray, and here we have honest conversations about health, about relationships, and everything in between, especially as it relates to menopause and midlife. Here, this space here, um, it's a space where we name things so that we can grow without disappearing. When people talk about decentering men, it often gets framed as pull away from them, detach from them, or need less. Need less. But the deeper question, and where the tension sits for me, is around what exactly am I being asked to move out of the center? And what I keep coming back to is this: what needs to move out of the center isn't love, it's not desire, it's not partnership, it's self abandonment. It's the habit of quieting myself to keep things smooth. It's the reflex to manage the emotional climate so the relationship doesn't feel threatened. It's the part of me that disappears just enough to stay chosen. So let me ask, when you think about centering yourself, what do you feel you have to forego or give up in your relationship? Now, since we know that attachment itself isn't the problem, after all, we're wired for attachment. We're wired to bond. We humans are wired to co regulate. So the problem isn't attachment. The problem is when attachment becomes conditional on self erasure. So the reframe that I'm working looks like this: the relationship stays, the desire for partnership stays, the wish to build a life with someone stays. But I stop orbiting the relationship at the expense of myself. I stop treating my interior life as negotiable. I think that part of what makes this conversation so charged is that we confuse loneliness with aloneness. Because I'll tell you, what I'm afraid of isn't being alone, it's loneliness. It's not being seen, it's not having emotional resonance with someone. But then aloneness, on the other hand, is different. Aloneness is solitude um, without abandoning yourself. So I'm not pretending that men don't benefit from patriarchy, but not always. That's a conversation for another time. Um, and both things, I would say that both things can exist at the same time. We deserve protection, hands down, and we deserve romantic partnership if that's what we desire. So here, that's what I'm speaking to. The question I'm actually living with right now is this: how do I stay in connection without giving the relationship alone